Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So I want to start off the show talking about MACD. I get a lot of questions about a specific signal, so I want to spend some time on it. Most people, when they look at MACD divergences, they look at the standard divergence where they're basically trying to call a top in a move. But I want to talk about what I call a reverse divergence. I think it's a more powerful signal, especially if we look at a couple other things associated with it, a few other indicators that I think can really confirm the signal itself. All right, I think this will be really helpful. Once we do that, we will go through the symbol requests that came through after talking about the market and seeing how things look. All right, let's start out with the weekly chart of IBM. All right, and what I want to explain here is I'm using, it's a MACD signal. All right, but I'm using other indicators to determine how good or how strong that indicator really is, in my opinion. All right, now typically what we look for when we look at divergence and what most people talk about is we have a stock that's moving up and then it pulls back and then it makes a higher high in price, okay? And then the MACD makes a lower high. This is our classic standard divergence. And it's what everyone talks about because you have an opportunity to pick a top. All right, and everybody wants to be a hero and hit it right at the peak and then make the call that I told everybody to sell or I sold right at the peak, and you want to be able to tell everyone that. All right, but what I would rather do is have a signal that is in the direction of the bigger trend. Because if I can do that, then I know I'm increasing my odds. My odds are going to go way up. All right, so we have this move to the upside, but then look at what happens. We pull back right in the area of a rising 18. All right, now what makes this really interesting is that we're making a higher high in price while the MACD is making a lower low. I'm sorry, we're making a higher low here in price and a lower low here in the MACD. All right, now there's a couple of other attractive features to this. Number one, we have rising 18 above a rising 40, and they're both moving up, at a decent pace, not going crazy. The 18 isn't skyrocketing away from the 40. They're going up at about the same rate. All right. The other thing is we have a very strong condition here in ADX, controlled and in command by the buyers. All right. Now there is a little sneaky thing we can also see. We made a higher low in price, but look at how the DI, the green DI, made a lower low. Do you see that? So that's a little confirming evidence. I mean, I usually just stick with the MACD, but it is good to see that we can see other indicators sometimes making that same signal. But what this offers me is the ability to get in with a sign of divergence. All right, and in this case, it would be a trading play. If we get it early in the trend when it's just emerging and we get a momentum divergence like this, a reverse divergence, then we can really take advantage of it and be in it for a while. Now, this is truly the first pullback after it broke out here. And if you notice the way this happened, we had kind of a harsh decline and then we rallied up and then we came back down. And look at how it's holding the 40, but look at what MACD is doing. So we can compare this low here, right there, right? So I can kind of take this down. And I can see that, we basically made a low here. And then we can compare this low and see that we're making a lower low in MACD. And look at how it's hovering right above the zero line. I call this a flyby because it doesn't actually touch the zero line, but it comes down close and then turns. This is a really attractive signal, and if it happens right after a breakout or as we're breaking out in the area of the breakout, it tends to be something that can be played for a bigger move. This I would typically look for just a trading play because we've already played out for a while. All right, let me give you another example. So we can look at something like JP Morgan, a stock that's been incredibly strong, and look at the repetitive nature of this signal. Now, if you're just focusing on these standard divergences, you're getting these little dips that you think are maybe the start of a reversal. All right, but if you notice what happens is we make a lower low here and look at how we're holding and respecting a rising 18. So we're in the direction of the trend. We keep playing those. There's a higher low. Here's another higher low. Here's another higher low, right? We got lower low here, and lower low here. Now, once this happens, and we kind of lose strength in the ADX, if we had another one develop, I don't know that I'd have as much interest in it. But if you notice, we're kind of back into a stronger position. If this were to come back to the 18 and this were to make a lower low, and we still have a pretty good look here, and the moving averages are still looking decent, then it could set up again. So we want to always be on the lookout for this. This is a hard thing to kind of keep an eye out for. Sometimes it takes a little time for people to get used to seeing it. Now, the last example I want to use is actually on the negative side. I get a lot of questions about this, but I want to show how this can play out on the downside. So we've got a stock making lower highs and lower lows here. All right. Now notice how MACD is also making lower highs and lower lows. All right. Until we get to this point here, and this makes a lower high here, and this is making a higher high. Okay. Now, because we've already moved down somewhat, we want to look at this as a trading play. All right. But we have enough momentum in place based on the ADX to go ahead and take this type of a trade. Now, when I do these trades, I don't do them off of this time frame. I go down. So if this is happening on a weekly chart, I'm going to go down to the daily chart, just like I talk about in my courses and on my for my monthly subscribers. We go into the detail as to what we're looking for on the daily chart to trigger us in to make this a viable trade. All right, so we want to be on the lookout for this in both directions, but it happens a lot, and we can just give you one more example. Here's a double bottom and slightly higher low in price, and you see the lower low right into the zero line. This is a great trading play. Now, yeah, some of these are moving up based on earnings. Maybe you don't get an opportunity to get in, but the reality is that it's giving us the right kind of feedback. We want to be on the lookout for this signal, and I think it can be very, very helpful. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. I'm on the services page right now. You can see at the top, I've got the advanced trend and momentum courses individually priced for lifetime access. Plus you could buy them as a bundle at a discount. And then also the individual package has about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video commentary each week for that package. Also, if you're new to this approach and you want to just learn more about it, you can start with the book I'm offering at a discount right now. As always, my comments are for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investments. All right, let's start with the QQQ. It's trading very similar to what's taken place in the SPY. And one of the things that is why I'm saying that is because we've made new highs in price, but we're not getting any real strength in the ADX. And that comes after we've had really pretty good strength in the trend. All right, so this new move late last year, early this year, doesn't have much trend strength associated with it. MACD is now unable to get back above its signal line on a new high move. So these are all concerning things, but what I've been saying for a while is that we need to break the 18-week. You can see where this actually came down, and I wouldn't consider this a true break because we didn't follow through below the low of the bar that broke, right? So we got up, we made a higher low here, we got kind of up and going. And since that time, we've been respecting the 18. Now we're sitting on the 18 again right here. All right, now the question becomes, do we break that? Or, and if we do, then I think that signal on ADX comes home to roost, and I think it actually creates some downside risk in this down into a bigger support area. All right, so it's something we've got to keep an eye on and how this trades around this line. It continues to show respect for it right now, but notice what's taking place on the daily chart. The last 3 bars, a lot of strength to the downside, and look at the volume pattern causing, and there's a high correlation to volume and the red DI, and you can notice that when we get real pressure and volume, a lot of times we'll see this breaking out, which is what's taking place. So the sellers are showing some signs of strength. The problem we've got is that this is a big range here, right? I mean, we're not really I wouldn't consider this a big breakout or breakdown yet. It's still caught inside this range, and the MACD is just working back down to the zero line. So I think we're going to need something like a lower high to form and then a move to the downside like that. And if we get that, then, and I'm breaking through this 510 area, I think would be a pretty big negative for this. And I also think that would confirm what we're seeing in a break of the 18 week. So when we get stretched away from the 18 and we just don't, we haven't come back and tested that area, we want to keep an eye out, especially when there's low trend strength in place on the weekly chart. All right, let's look at the IWM. So IWM continues to be a concern, and the main concern for me is the fact that the relative strength trend continues to drop. All right, and yes, there has been money made over the course of this move, especially if you're focusing on the relative strength and some of the bigger cap names that have played out pretty well. But in terms of looking for an expansion where more stocks are participating and we have a better overall environment, this line rising is what we're looking for. And we haven't had that. That means there's not a great broadening effect. There's not a huge amount of participation, especially when we look at the small cap universe. So we're going to need that to improve. And the pattern itself just isn't showing a lot of improvement across multiple time frames. Now, it hasn't broken down. There's a lot of support down in the lower 200s, 205, 206, 207 for IWM. So I'm not necessarily thinking this is going to fall apart, but again, it's all about the nature of what the condition of the market is like, and I think the conditions are better when this index is outperforming the S&P. All right, let's look at Bitcoin. I think this is important from a risk on, risk off standpoint, right? I mean, I think it gives you a sense of how people are feeling, and the fact that this is slicing through the 18-week line is a bit of a concern. Now, what we're talking about here is we break the 18-week, all right, but we have strength here. All right, now MACD is rolling through. So when that happens, I'm typically not interested in playing the first move back to the upside. Like if this were to come back up and cross back up through 100, I wouldn't have as much interest in it. I think I would be looking for a move up and then a pullback. And if the pullback can hold and turn back to the upside, then I'd have a lot more interest in playing the second move. All right, that's what this MACD signal. When we have strength here, we want to keep watching it. But when the MACD is doing this far away from the zero line, we got to be a little bit more careful about our entry point. So I think this could take a little bit more time. Now, another thing to watch for, just like I was talking about with the QQQ, is if this comes down and it doesn't really get back through this resistance, makes the lower high, then there's probably more downside risk in this, and something we got to watch pretty closely, I would say, over the next week. All right, let's look at UNG because energy is on the brink here. It hasn't broken down. It hasn't broken out. It looks like it's forming something that could be pretty important. But what I would tell you is that natural gas and the individual stocks in natural gas are performing way better than the sector, the overall energy sector. This is a pretty nice looking turn that's developing, and it really has gotten this weekly chart starting to show improvement. One thing I wanted to point out is look at the low ADX condition that was in place, and now we're showing the buyers starting to kick in. So when I see that, I am very interested in playing this for a pullback. Now, what I would say is that if I'm looking at the individual stocks that are natural gas stocks, there's been a lot of volatility associated with these and kind of sharp pullbacks and all. So just be careful. Make sure you're getting good entry on those. When it comes to UNG, I would assume there'd be pretty good support around the 20 area. All right. Now, one last thing on energy. Let's look at what's going on with Chevron. I think Chevron's pretty important right now. And the reason is that it's a big name, and typically you'll start with some of the big stocks like EOG or CVX, which both have a pretty attractive pattern developing. Notice what happened to the MACD. The MACD was incredibly overbought at the beginning of 2023, and now it's worked its way all the way back down and forming a little flyby right above the zero line here. No sign of real selling pressure. So it almost looks like it's ready to turn back up right above the zero line, but we need price to confirm, and that's the trend line that I drew. And let's go to the weekly chart. So we've got this trend line in place. If we can break that, then I think I would be a lot more interested, not only in this stock, but I think the sector also. All right, so that's something I'm watching pretty close. Watching this one and EOG, see if they can both break out. I think that would be a really good sign. All right, let's look at Intel, because I've gotten a lot of questions about Intel. So this must be being talked about a lot out there. Notice what happened. So we went to a new low. So we came down, we had pretty good momentum to the downside here, and we had a new low in the MACD as well. And then we get a sharp rally, and then we come back down and make another new low. But look at where it is. You see all this, look, all of these bottoms that took place here. We're back into a pretty key support area, and there's no real strength in ADX. It couldn't get back above 25, and MACD is actually making a higher low. So we've got a sign of sign of exhaustion into a big support area. So that's number one. Number two, if we go to the weekly chart, we actually came down and made a little bit of a double bottom. I don't think it actually made a new low. It was pretty close, but look at what's taking place. ADX is nowhere near. See how the strength to this decline, and then we make another decline, and there's no strength here, and then MACD not only doesn't make a new low, it makes a significantly higher low above its signal line. So, I mean, these are all kind of encouraging signs when I look at this from a bigger picture standpoint coming into support. Now, if we look at the daily chart, we've shown some strength, we've shown some buyers. Now I want to see a higher low here. See the strength coming in? This is all pretty good stuff, but you need a little bit of confirmation because this is still down below the 18-month. I think if we're going to get a turn here, a true reversal, we're going to need a little bit more strength to kind of prove itself at this point. All right, let's look at Tesla. Now, what I talk about on this channel a lot, on this show a lot, is this. All right, we get strong move to the upside in any stock. You get a strong move to the upside. That's really bullish. I want to start watching it. Okay. However, now I have to watch the strength of the decline. So that's what I talk about this in my course. I show you how I measure using MACD and ADX, measure the strength going to the upside, and then really using ADX on the pullback to see how strong the declines are. All right. And so this decline is a little too strong. And the other thing I'll say is that it's breaking the 18-week line. And we have MACD crossing down through the signal line. All right. And we have strong ADX. So we've got these kind of opposing signals here where MACD is crossing down, but this is showing a lot of strength. So what does that tell me? Is exactly what I was talking about earlier, is we look for kind of a ratcheting pattern here, not a straight up affair. This is not a signal coming back up through here, in my opinion. I think you come up, you come back down, and if it survives, then it could turn back to the upside. Now, it's also possible this just keeps kind of dropping and re-entering the breakout, and then this up move was kind of like a flame out. It just flames out, and we go to a new high here, and then it just completely aborts. Now, I'm sort of watching something really closely here, and that's the fact that the RSI 20 is still in the area of the 50 mark. And we're deeply, deeply oversold. If you go back and look, this is a really an area where you want to be on the lookout for some kind of a rally. Now, the rally has to show signs of a real turn before I'd be interested, but it still has the possibility of pulling that off. I just think it'll take a little bit of time to get itself going again and getting back up through 400. All right. SERV. Little bit of a sharp pullback with the gap and everything. I think there's too much resistance up there at 20. Probably has pretty good support closer to 9, but I think we've got some time to watch this one. Now, looking at IVR. So when I look at this, the way it strikes me is this. It's basically a spike and ledge pattern. This is a Linda Raschke setup. And if you notice what's taken place is we've kind of created this sideways line here, right about 10, just under 10, okay? And but we have this spike level and then we rally up. So we've kind of formed this higher ledge, okay? Now, in order for this to really kick into gear, we need to take out the upper end of the ledge. But I think this is a pretty good sign of like a climatic activity. I don't think there's a huge amount of downside. The question becomes, when does this actually get going again? And I think we're going to have to take out the upper end of this to really get things on the move. All right, CI, too violent in the break end of last year. You see the volume pattern, a little bit too sharp, and we're below the 18-month now. Now, the good news is that there's a decent amount of support. I don't think there's a lot of downside. I just don't think there's a lot of money to be made in this at this point. My guess is that it spends more time just kind of working sideways in the near term. So we need this to rehab a little bit before it's going to be ready. CADL, one of the things that bugs me when I see a stock like this is just these spike levels up here. You can see it on both the monthly and the weekly. There's just a little too much resistance. I don't think I want to play pullbacks when I know there's resistance right there. And then look at this big red bar. So I don't think I'd be as intrigued by something like this. A little bit too violent in the reversals. Seems like there's some sellers up there. Now, I mean, it might go sideways a little bit longer, but I do think we're going to, instead of breaking down, but I do think we're going to have to emerge out of this sideways area to really get things going. And then ABSI, again, look at what we've got. We get a move to the upside with some pretty good strength. We get ADX going, but then we want to watch and evaluate the pullback, and the pullback is too sharp. I'm not as interested in this pullback because of the way it's reversed. That means it could spend some time consolidating, but either way, I think it's going to need a little bit more time. I don't like the fact that it failed right at the prior peak as well. So just be careful here in the near term. Thanks for watching today. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn some more about some of these techniques with MACD and ADX, you can go to my YouTube channel called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.